This video is Chapter 7, Notes, Part 3, the final segment for photosynthesis. This set of notes is all about transpiration. Transpiration is the loss of water from a plant's leaves. As you know, plants take in water from their roots. Water is used by plant cells for a variety of reactions, but one of those is photosynthesis. So plants need water in order to do photosynthesis because water is what replaces the electrons in photosystem 2 after they get excited. So in order for photosynthesis to happen, water is required. Water is also used by the cells of a plant for a variety of other reactions as well. So transpiration is a bad thing. Transpiration is when the plant is losing water through its leaves. The reason that this occurs is due to these tiny holes called stomates. Stomates are holes in the surface of a plant leaf, and the purpose of those holes is to let carbon dioxide in. Plants need carbon dioxide in order to build glucose. The carbons in the glucose molecule come from the carbons in carbon dioxide. So if a plant is taking in no carbon dioxide, it would be able to build no sugars. So these tiny holes in the surface of the leaf need to be open so that CO2 can get in. However, during the time when they are open, water can accidentally escape through them, causing the plant to lose water from its leaves. This shows a little bit about water potential due to the rearrangement of order this year that I went in. Water potential will be discussed in more detail second semester. But the idea of water potential is that molecules always spread out. We saw this with the hydrogen ion concentration that gets created during cellular respiration. Molecules tend to spread away from one another. This is an idea, like I said, we will continue to explore next semester. But if the plant contains more water than the air, then the air is going to take those water molecules from the plant. Plants have evolved over millions of years ways to counteract this problem of water loss. And the biggest way that they can counteract the problem is by opening and closing their stomates, or stoma, or stomata. All of those are the same thing. They're all the little holes in the plant. So by opening and closing the stomates, the plant can control how much water is lost. However, if the stomate is closed, the plant can't take in carbon dioxide. So it's like a little conundrum. The plant has a problem. It needs the holes open, but doesn't want them open too long. Plants have evolved also several ways other than just opening and closing stomates to also combat water loss. One of those is by having almost no leaves. Cacti tend to live in places that are very dry. They are not very leafy because the more leaf area there is, the more stomates there would be, the more holes there would be, and thus the more water would get lost. So cacti have evolved these modified leaves, like spikes or thorns, to reduce the number of holes they have. Plants that live in very wet environments, like this one, this guy, he's very happy inside that giant leaf. I would predict that that leaf on the right would be in a very moist, wet environment, such as like in the rainforest. because that plant is experiencing no problem having huge leaf area and thus many, many stomates. So the size of the leaf is related to the number of stomates there are. Some plants also have hairy leaves. Those little hairs are called trichomes, and they reduce the airflow over the plant. So the idea is that if the leaf loses water, those water molecules would get trapped close by the plant, and thus the plant would lose less water because the air around it is already moist. So the idea of the hair is to trap water molecules, reduce the amount of new air touching the plant, because all new air can whisk away those water molecules. Another adaptation shown on this slide is a waxy covering called a cuticle. That kind of works like the hairs, where the idea is to reduce the amount of airflow over the plant and keep water molecules trapped close to the surface of the leaf. There are several things that also impact whether or not the plant is transpiring and losing a lot of water or not. So one, like I mentioned, is the availability of water. Leafy plants that have a lot of stomates will tend to be in wet places where water loss is not an issue. Non-leafy plants would be more likely to be seen in dry climates where having a leaf and having more stomates is going to cause a problem. Temperature also can affect whether or not stomates are open or closed. Warm air has the potential to take more water away from the plant. In a warm environment, the oxygen molecules are more spread out, so there's more room in here for water molecules to go after they are sucked away from the plant. Cold air, the particles are closer together, so there's simply less room and less storage for water molecules. So plants in warm environments tend to lose more water than those that are in cold environments. Light also can affect transpiration. The name of the game in photosynthesis is build sugars. So if the plant has a lot of light available, it will try to maximize the amount of sugars made and thus open more stomates. So usually a plant kept in light, like 24 hours of light, would be losing a lot of water because those stomates would stay open so that the plant can get carbon dioxide to do photosynthesis. Wind also can greatly impact the amount of water lost by a plant. The idea is that wind brings new air that is not yet saturated with water. So in my picture, my wind is blowing that way. I've got air over here. If you imagine my dots represent the amount of water molecules, let's say these dots are the little water molecules. Well, when the air comes past the plant is going to lose water molecules, and that air will become more full of water. Well, if the wind is continually blowing, it's going to continually bring unsaturated air over, such that more and more water gets pulled from the plant. Also, to conclude, hormones. Just like you have hormones, plants have hormones. They're taking into account all of the things that are happening in their environment simultaneously, and they are making essentially decisions or choices about when to open and close the stomates. Obviously, these aren't conscious like with a brain, but there's chemical pathways where there's receptors on the plant cells that can sense temperature, can sense wind, can sense light, and can sense the need to build sugars. So it's extremely complex on whether or not the plant will open the stomates. But generally, there are certain environmental criteria that will result in more of a water loss from the plant.